The sound of my own mortality is a rhythmic beep, beep, beep that echoes off the sterile white walls of the ICU, a metronome counting down the seconds of a life that feels increasingly like a burden to everyone but me. I am lying in a bed that smells of bleach and despair, my chest feeling like it has been kicked by a mule, my skin clammy with the cold sweat of survival. This is the third time this month. I am 74 years old, a retired software engineer who built the infrastructure for half the banking systems in the state. I understand logic. I understand code. I understand that machines do what they are told, executing commands without malice or mercy. But I do not understand why my pacemaker, the state-of-the-art device implanted 6 months ago to save my life, keeps trying to end it. My daughter, Clara, sits in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to the bed. She is crying, sniffing loudly into a tissue, but her eyes are dry. She checks her watch every few minutes, a nervous tick that betrays her boredom. Her husband, Greg, stands by the window, tapping furiously on his tablet. He doesn't look worried. He looks impatient. He looks like a man waiting for a delayed flight, checking the departure board, annoyed that the plane hasn't taken off yet. Except in this scenario, I am the plane, and he is waiting for me to crash. "Dad," Clara sniffles, reaching for my hand. Her palm is damp and cold. It feels less like a comfort and more like a clammy shackle. "The doctor said this was a close one," she continues, her voice trembling with a performance of grief she likely practiced in the mirror. Maybe it's time to sign the power of attorney, just so we can handle things if the next one is the big one. We don't want your accounts frozen in probate. It would be a mess." I look at her. I look at the daughter I raised, the girl I taught to ride a bike, the woman whose college tuition I paid in full so she wouldn't start life with debt. I look at Greg, standing in his designer suit that I know he bought on credit. There is a hunger in this room that has nothing to do with missed lunch. They have debts. I know about Greg's failed crypto ventures. I saw the browser history on the guest Wi-Fi before I got sick. I know about Clara's shopping addiction, the Amazon boxes that arrive daily and are hidden in the garage under tarps. They need my signature to access the trust fund that is strictly locked until my death or medical incapacitation.
"I'm not dead yet," I whisper. My voice is raspy from the oxygen mask, weak and reedy, a ghost of the baritone I used to command boardrooms with. "But you're suffering," Greg says, turning from the window. The light from his tablet reflects in his glasses, hiding his eyes, turning him into a faceless observer. He walks toward the bed, his shoes clicking on the linoleum. "We just want to make sure your assets are safe, Arthur," he says, his tone dripping with a condescension usually reserved for toddlers. "The stress of managing your portfolio, the volatility of the market, it's probably what's triggering these episodes. You need to let go. You need to let us carry the burden." It feels like gaslighting, but my chest hurts too much to argue. Every time I refuse the money, my heart goes haywire. Last week, I said no to a loan for Greg's new business idea, something about AI-generated art that sounded like a pyramid scheme. 2 hours later, I was on the floor, my heart racing at 180 beats per minute, my vision tunneling into blackness. I lay there listening to the machine breathe for me, realizing that the people supposed to hold my hand are actually counting the seconds until they can pry the rings off my fingers. It is a lonely, terrifying coldness to look at your children and wonder if they are praying for your recovery or your funeral. If you have ever felt the walls of your own home closing in, or suspected that the people you love value your legacy more than your life, take a moment to subscribe to the reality that betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people with keys to your house. Because I am about to find out that the monster isn't under the bed, it's in the Bluetooth signal. The door opens. Dr. Eris walks in. He is my cardiologist, a man I've known for 20 years. He has gray hair, and the kind of deep-set eyes that have seen too much death to be surprised by it. But today, he looks grim. He doesn't look at Clara or Greg. He doesn't offer the usual platitudes about stability or recovery. He looks at me with an intensity that scares me more than the arrhythmia. "I need everyone out," Dr. Aris says. His voice is hard, flat, leaving no room for negotiation. "Now, I need to run a diagnostic on the device firmware. It is a delicate procedure." "We're family," Greg protests, taking a step forward, puffing out his chest. "We have a right to know what's happening."
"If there's a malfunction, we need to document it for the insurance." "Out," Aris barks. It is the command of a man who saves lives, directed at men who ruin them. He turns to the nurse stationed by the door. "Nurse, escort them to the waiting room. Do not let them back in until I say so." They leave. Clara looks insulted, gathering her purse with a huff. Greg looks back at the monitor one last time, his fingers twitching against his tablet as if he wants to press one more button. The door clicks shut, and the silence that follows is heavy. Dr. Aris walks to the door and locks it. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home echoes in the small room. He pulls a chair close to my bed, scraping the metal legs against the floor. He opens his laptop and connects it to the bedside monitor via a hardline cable, bypassing the wireless signal. "Arthur," he says, his voice dropping to a low whisper. He leans in close, his face inches from mine. "I didn't want to say this in front of them. It wasn't safe. I ran the logs from your pacemaker. The arrhythmia you experienced tonight, the spike that brought you in here, it wasn't biological." "What do you mean?" I ask. My heart skips a beat for real this time, a flutter of genuine fear that has nothing to do with electricity. "Your heart is weak, Arthur, but it is steady on the medication," he explains. "This event, it was mathematically impossible for your physiology, so I looked at the data." He turns the laptop screen toward me. I see streams of data, lines of code that are as familiar to me as my own handwriting. I spent 40 years looking at logs like this. I know what an error looks like, and I know what an intrusion looks like. "Your device is a smart link model," Aris continues, pointing to the screen. "It connects to your home Wi-Fi for nightly updates and data uploads. It has a remote monitoring feature, so I can check your stats from the hospital. But someone accessed the admin panel at 7:42 p.m. tonight." He points to a line of red code on the screen. It is a command line. "Set passing threshold max." "That was 10 minutes before your collapse," Aris says grimly. "They manually adjusted the pacing threshold to induce ventricular tachycardia. They didn't just monitor you, Arthur. They shocked you. They overrode the safety protocols and sent a command to your heart to run itself to death." I stare at the screen. The timestamp burns into my retinas. 7:42 p.m. I was in the kitchen.
I was leaning against the granite island, drinking a glass of water. Greg was sitting at the table, arguing with me about the trust fund. He was holding his iPad. He told me that stress was a killer. He looked at me, tapped the screen, and then the world went black. "You're saying," I struggled to get the air into my lungs, the betrayal hitting me harder than the cardiac event. "You're saying it was hacked?" "I'm saying the IP address that sent the command came from inside your house," Aris says. He taps a key, bringing up the device footprint. Specifically, it came from a device registered on your local network as Greg's iPad Pro. The world stops. The beeping of the monitor fades into a dull roar, like the sound of the ocean inside a shell. My son-in-law isn't just impatient, he is an assassin. He is using my own heart as a remote-controlled weapon. Every episode, every trip to the ER, every moment of fear where I thought my body was failing me, it was him. It was him pushing a button, torturing me into submission, trying to kill me without leaving a fingerprint. He was trying to induce a fatal heart attack so the autopsy would show natural causes. It is a perfect crime. No poison, no weapon, just a line of code sent over the airwaves. "Can you trace it?" I ask. My fear hardens. It crystallizes into a cold, diamond-hard rage. I am not a victim anymore. I am an engineer who has found a bug in the system. "I already have," Aris says. "I have the logs, I have the IP, I have the timestamp. This is attempted murder, Arthur. I should call the police right now. I have a duty to report this." He reaches for the landline on the wall. "No," I say. I sit up. I wince as the adhesive leads pull on the hair of my chest, but I ignore the pain. "Not yet." Aris pauses, his hand on the receiver. "Why? He tried to kill you. He might try again tonight. If we arrest him now, he claims it was an accident," I say, my mind racing, calculating the variables. He claims he was checking my stats because he was worried, and he accidentally hit the wrong setting.
He claims the app malfunctioned. He has a high-priced lawyer on retainer for his business dealings. He'll bury this in court for years. He'll say I'm senile and confused. He'll walk away. Then what do? Eris asks, lowering his hand. We can't let him go back to that house with you. We give him enough rope, I say. I look at the laptop screen, at the line of red code that almost ended my life. I think about Greg's smirk.
I think about Clara's dry eyes. He wants a heart attack, I ask, looking Eris in the eye. I'm going to give him a flat line. I swing my legs over the side of the bed. The hospital gown is thin, but I feel armored. Send me home, doctor, I say. Discharge me. Tell them I'm stable but fragile. Tell them any shock could be fatal. Arthur, this is dangerous, Eris warns. He thinks he's playing a video game, I say. He thinks he has the controller. We need to change the game. Can you set up a mirror server? Can you intercept the signal? Eris looks at me, his brow furrowed. I can route the device telemetry through a simulator. I can make his iPad think it's connected to you, but it will actually be connected to a virtual heart model on my laptop. Good, I say. When we get home, he's going to try again. He's desperate. He needs the money by the end of the month. When he pushes that button, I want him to see the result he's praying for. I stand up. My legs are shaky, but my resolve is iron. Send me home, doctor. We have a trap to set, and I want to see his face when the ghost walks back into the room. The ride home from the hospital was a masterclass in deception, a play where I was the dying king and my son-in-law was the executioner waiting in the wings. I sat in the back seat of Greg's luxury SUV, a car I paid for with the dividends of a career spent building systems that never failed, feigning a weakness I no longer felt. I clutched my chest theatrically. I gasped for air periodically, making a ragged, wet sound in the back of my throat that I knew would grate on his nerves. I watched Greg in the rearview mirror. He wasn't looking at the road. He was glancing at his dashboard mount where his iPad sat, glowing with the app that controlled my life. The screen cast a pale, sickly light on his face, highlighting the anticipation in his eyes. He looked empowered. He looked like a god deciding when the lightning would strike, his finger hovering near the trigger of my mortality. You really should sign the papers tonight, Dad, Clara said from the passenger seat. She sounded tired, the bone-deep fatigue of the complicit. She didn't turn around to look at me. She stared out the windshield at the passing streetlights, her reflection in the glass looking ghostly and detached. Dr. Eris said your heart is unstable, she continued, her voice flat. If something happens, we need to be able to pay the bills. We need to access the accounts to pay for the funeral.
I mean, the medical costs. I caught the slip. She was already burying me. I know, I wheezed, letting my head loll against the cold glass of the window. I closed my eyes, feigning exhaustion, but my mind was racing at the speed of light. I'm tired of fighting, Clara. Bring the notary over for dinner. I'll sign everything. I just want peace. I just want the pain to stop. Greg's eyes lit up in the mirror. It was visceral, a shark smelling blood in the water. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, not with stress, but with excitement. That's a smart decision, Arthur, he said, his voice smooth and oily. We'll take care of everything. You can just rest. You've earned it. We arrived at the house. It was a smart home I had designed myself 10 years ago. Everything was connected. The lights, the locks, the thermostat, and my heart. I walked into the living room, leaning heavily on my cane, dragging my left foot slightly to sell the performance. I felt the invisible web of the Wi-Fi network washing over me. It used to feel like convenience, like living in the future. Now it felt like a cage. Every router was a bar, every signal a shackle. I went to my study. I told them I needed to gather my strength. I locked the door. The click of the deadbolt was the first honest sound I had heard all day. I went to the wall safe behind the painting of the ship at sea. I spun the dial, left, right, left. It opened with a heavy thud. Inside was a burner phone I had kept for emergencies, a relic of a time when I worked on sensitive government contracts. I powered it on. I called Dr. Eris. Are you ready? I asked. The police are stationed down the block in an unmarked van, Eris whispered. His voice was tense. I've set up the remote override on my end. I'm mirroring your device signal to a simulator. I've rerouted the MAC address. When Greg sends the command, it won't hit your heart. It will hit the simulator.
And the feedback? I asked. The simulator will broadcast a flatline signal to his iPad. Eris confirmed. He'll see the chaotic rhythm, then the drop. He'll think you're dead. But Arthur, if the signal fails, if the override doesn't catch it, it won't fail, I said. I wrote the encryption protocol for that router, Doctor. I know the back doors better than anyone. Just be ready to breach. Good luck, Arthur, Eris said. Let's catch a killer. Dinner was served at 7 p.m. The table was set with the good china, the plates usually reserved for Thanksgiving.
Greg had ordered steak from the most expensive chop house in the city and opened a bottle of vintage Cabernet from my cellar, a bottle I had been saving for my 75th birthday. He was celebrating early. He was toasting to my demise before the body was even cold. The notary, a nervous woman named Brenda with oversized glasses, sat at the end of the table. She looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat as the power of attorney documents sat stacked neatly by her plate, a paper tombstone waiting for my signature. "Eat up, Arthur," Greg said, pouring himself a large glass of wine. The liquid swirled dark and red, like arterial blood. "Last meal as a stressed man. Tomorrow you're retired for real. No more worries, just relaxation." I looked at the steak. It was rare, bloody. I felt a wave of nausea. "I have one condition," I said. I pushed my plate away. The ceramics scraped loudly against the wood. Greg frowned. He set his wineglass down. He tapped the screen of his iPad, which was propped up next to his glass like a centerpiece. It was the guest of honor. "Condition?" he asked, his tone sharpening. "I want to audit the crypto accounts," I said. My voice gained a fraction of its old strength. I let the mask slip just a fraction, showing the steel underneath. "I want to see where the last 50,000 went before I sign over the rest. I want to see the ledger." Greg stiffened, his jaw clenched. "We discussed this. That money is gone. Market volatility. Bitcoin crashed. You know how it is." "It wasn't the market," I said, staring him down. I locked eyes with him, refusing to blink. "It was a gambling site based in Malta. I saw the browser history, Greg. I saw the transfers. You aren't an investor. You're an addict, and you're a thief." The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Clara looked down at her lap, refusing to meet my eyes, her fingers twisting a napkin into a tight rope. Brenda, the notary, looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Greg's face darkened. The charm evaporated, replaced by the ugly, desperate anger of a man cornered. He reached for his iPad. "You're confused, Arthur," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your heart isn't getting enough oxygen to your brain. You're having an episode. You're agitated. This is exactly why you can't be in charge anymore." "I feel fine," I said. "I feel better than I have in months." "No," Greg said. His finger hovered over the screen. He looked at me with cold, dead eyes.
"You don't." He tapped the screen. I saw the motion. I saw the slide of his finger. He slid the virtual slider bar to max. It was a movement that took less than a second, a casual swipe that was meant to stop a human heart. Instantly, Dr. Harris's plan kicked in. The simulator intercepted the signal. My physical heart beat steadily, calm and strong in my chest. Thump, 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 thump. But on the room's surround sound speakers, which were connected to the house system, and on Greg's iPad, the chaos began. A loud, frantic beeping filled the room. Beep, 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 beep. It was the sound of a heart in full rebellion. I grabbed my chest. I groaned, a guttural sound of pain. I slid out of my chair onto the floor, knocking the silverware to the ground with a clatter. I committed to the performance. I thrashed slightly, kicking my legs, gasping for air like a fish on a dock. "Dad!" Clara screamed. She jumped up, her chair flying backward. She rushed to me, kneeling beside me, her hands hovering uselessly over my body. "Greg, help him! Call 911! Do something!" "He's fine," Greg shouted over the beeping. He didn't move. He didn't reach for his phone. He stared at his iPad, entranced. The screen glowed on his face, illuminating a look of pure, scientific fascination. "It's just a little flutter," he lied. "He needs to calm down. Let it pass." He looked at me writhing on the floor. He looked at the father of his wife, the man who paid his mortgage.
He didn't call 911. He didn't offer CPR. He watched the screen, waiting for the line to go flat. Then the beeping stopped. A single, continuous, high-pitched tone filled the room. Beep. Flat line. The sound pierced the air. Sharp and final. "Oh my God," Clara wailed. She collapsed onto my chest, weeping. "He's dead. Greg, he's dead. You killed him." Greg looked at the screen. He saw the flat green line. A slow, terrifying smile spread across his face. It wasn't relief. It was victory. It was the smile of a man who had just inherited $10 million and erased his debts with a single swipe. "It's over," he whispered to himself. "It's finally over." "Not quite," I said. I opened my eyes. I sat up. I pushed Clara gently aside. I adjusted my collar, straightening my tie. Greg jumped back, knocking his chair over. He scrambled backward until he hit the wall. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. "What? How?" he stammered. "The monitor, it says." "It's a simulator, Greg," I said. I stood up.
I brushed the dust off my trousers. I looked him in the eye. "My heart is fine, but your life is over." The front door burst open with a crash. "Police!" an officer shouted. Uniformed officers swarmed the dining room, their guns drawn, their flashlights cutting through the dim ambient light. Dr. Eris walked in behind them, holding his laptop like a shield. "Step away from the device," the lead officer commanded, aiming his weapon at Greg. Greg stood frozen, the iPad still in his hand, displaying the max voltage command he had just sent. It was the smoking gun, digital and undeniable. The screen was a confession written in light. "He hacked me," Greg stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He's crazy. He set me up. This is entrapment." "We have the log, son," the officer said, grabbing Greg's wrist and twisting the iPad out of his hand. "We saw the command. Attempted murder via medical device. That's a new one, even for this precinct." They slammed Greg against the wall. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was louder than the flatline tone had been. Clara was sobbing in the corner, holding her face. I didn't know he would kill him. I thought he was just monitoring." "You knew he was hurting me," I said, looking at my daughter. I felt a profound sadness, a hollow ache where my love for her used to be. "You watched me suffer for months. You watched me fall. And you handed him the tablet. You gave him the password. You are just as guilty." "Officer," I said, turning to the policeman, "take her statement. She's an accessory." They dragged Greg out, screaming about his rights, about his lawyer, about how it was all a mistake. Clara was led away, weeping, asking me to forgive me. I didn't answer. Brenda, the notary, gathered her papers and ran out the back door without a word. I stood alone in the dining room. The silence returned. A real silence, not the silence of fear. I put my hand on my chest. I felt my heart beating. Thump, thump, thump. It was steady. It was strong. And it was mine. I walked to the corner of the room, where the main Wi-Fi router blinked its blue LED lights. I reached down. I pulled the plug from the wall. The lights died. The house went dark, save for the moonlight streaming through the window. "System offline," I whispered. I walked back to the table. I picked up Greg's wine glass. I took a sip. It was full-bodied, rich, with a finish that lingered. I poured the rest of the bottle down the sink. I didn't need it. The taste of justice was sweet enough.